It's the bar in the Dick's bar, basically. You know,
Mm-hmm. You have to keep going up and annoying him.
to get the lime Ricky without the rum or just to get the lime juice.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that doesn't sound like any fun.
It's a really good game, all in. I think you said you hadn't played it yet, right, Sarah?
No, I haven't played it. No.
Yeah, you don't even need the other ones. It's like
It
its
kind
own
of stands
little
alone.
cartoon. Because it has the text parser. It's in its own league.
Yeah, it's a hybrid. It's got the point and click and text parser. So.
Now, Ken needs to come on.
I'm trying to write a tweet
that
has all the featured guests, and I'm blanking so hard. We had Rob, Ken, Chris.
There's a few guys with similar names too.
What the hell? Rob Addison. Fucking hell. Wait, I'm live. I shouldn't be saying this.
This is the best way.
And we are live.
We already had all the curse words when it was not being broadcast.
All right, I'll just put "and more."
Yeah.
Pretty safe.
Well, we've still got more coming. All right, we got Stu Goldstein, Brian, Bob Holmes, Ken. All right, 4 out of 10. That's a start.
There we go. And my stream
5 out of 10.
Also.
Good. And Window Kid. Hey, which one are you? I don't know the tag names
That is
yet.
Brian Min.
That is Brian Min. Hi, Brian. Now I see a picture. Right.
Hi, Ken. Your background looks different these days, Ken.
Are you talking about mine?
Yeah.
Oh, that's my actual background.
Oh, God, that's cool.
That's my Star Trek stuff I worked on, and then I got a keyboard back there.
Wait, Star Trek stuff you worked on?
Yeah, that game. That's Judgment Rights right there, where the famous "Don't Tell Me How to Do My Job, It Sickens Me" took place.
No way.
Nice.
That's the project.
I usually tell everyone that
awesome.
story. But yeah, Ken was in the room when William Shatner said the famous "Don't tell me how to do my job, it sickens me."
No way.
Yeah, Ken was there.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I was there, and I learned a lesson not to tell people how to do their jobs, because it does,
especially not Bill.
Apparently it does sicken them.
That's it. I love that story so much.
Yeah, I don't think I've mentioned this to many others, but when I was at Interplay, I worked on. I took over a Star Trek game that had been released on floppy, and if you played the 25th anniversary or the follow-on Judgment Rights and you had the floppies, it took you a good 50 minutes to install that game. Well, my job, one of the first things I did was I had to turn that into a CD-ROM game. I had to go out and record all the actors and then hire Robert Heitman, to put in the programming and add additional animation. But in one of the recording sessions, I was there with William Shatner, and that's when that line came in. But I got to work with all but Leonard Nimoy. That was recorded earlier.
Cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
That is a great story.
That's awesome.
Well, there's more to it, but I'm giving you the abbreviated version.
Yeah, and you were not.
Yeah, we will share that for another time.
Yeah, you didn't actually piss off Bill Shatner. Someone else did.
No, that's
in the room.
You know, the key to being Bill Shatner is you're always pissed off. to misquote Hulk, you know.
Yeah.
I'm always angry.
Yes, exactly.
Just a quick one, because we now have Mr. Chris Brayman in. One of our Twitch chatters.
Hey, Chris.
Is saying that she's sleepy, she's exhausted, she can't stick around. She hopes we'll be here, but she just wants to know that someone tell Chris Brayman I adore him. But she did misspell your last name, so I don't know how genuine that actually is.
To be fair,
anybody wants it to be.
To be fair, I think the very good Sierra Music website for a long time, Quest Studios, spelled Chris's last name 2 different ways, pretty much alternate every time. So there's about half the releases that say Bray Man and half that say Bray Men, which is the correct spelling.
I just got notification. It was actually not her in the chat who said it. It was she's relaying the message from someone else who's not even in the chat, and she's now leaving. So that's all very confusing, and we should just stop talking about it. But
well, I echo
you.
whoever said that. I do adore Chris Brayman as well.
Yeah, I was gonna say Chris is adored in either scenario.
And any spelling.
In any spelling. When Chris was hired, I was thinking, I've got someone who's, I mean, not to discount anybody else, but I felt like Chris could probably outdo me. So,
nope.
Well, it's funny because I was just thinking yesterday that Chris was pretty much the successor to Ken after Ken left the company.
You did do the second,
and Aubry as well.
You did do the second Laura Bow game.
I got to do a lot of second games, and that was kind of cool because it gave me a spot to start, right? I mean, just coming up with something brand new was tough, and to be able to come in with some expectations already there made things a lot easier. The EcoQuest one, it was a new one for me, and it was a little bit of pulling teeth to try to get on the same page with everybody, what everybody wanted.
There was a lot of chiefs on that game too, wasn't there?
A little what?
A lot of chiefs, a lot of bosses on that project, a lot of people who thought they were in charge.
There were, and there was no existing game and no existing music, so the producer wanted one kind of music, and I wanted a different one, and somebody told me it was targeted at 8-year-old boys, and so I thought that meant something. So the first thing I wrote was the producer was like, "What is this? This is not at all what I want." And it went through some iterations.
Well, what's in there is fabulous.
That was all due to Bill Davis's negotiation.
Bill is also fabulous.
Gotta have somebody to meet in the middle for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right, we have by my admittedly fuzzy mathematics skills, we have 6 or 7 of the gentlemen of the 10 we had before. Rob is in the server but hasn't made it on audio, and then Neil is frantically trying to get on Discord on his desktop computer. So once we get those two on, we will resume. Just a very quick introduction. Sorry for the delay to anybody out there watching that thought it was going to be at 3 o'clock. 3 o'clock was an estimated time. And we were running late because of a lot of fabulous stories that were coming out. And we've cut those short to...
Oh, Neil.
We've cut those short to bring them to you instead of just ourselves. So once we get those last couple of guys on audio, we will resume regular programming.
And for those of you tuning in, wondering what the hell they've gotten themselves into, this is a gigantic, massive meetup of people who worked in the Sierra Music Department all the way from as far back as 1989, perhaps even earlier for for Stuart, and all the way up to when they shut the doors and let everyone go, which we will not talk about. I'll let everyone do their own introductions, but in addition to the fine Sierra music people, we also have people who have somehow wormed their way into the chat. These would be members of the Classic Gamers Guild. There's Anna, who is our chat. I was gonna say janitor. That's not nice.
Actually, I would be happy to be as cool of a janitor as Roger Wilco. I'll take it.
There you go. She's our chat whip cracker. I don't know. Anyway, she's CGG. She's also co-hosting this event. We have my man and secret lover, John Paul Sapsford, who. Lover of music, of course. We've done several albums together. Most notably, we ruined the hell out of Robert Holmes' Gabriel Knight soundtrack for Synths of the Fathers. And we've done a bunch of other stuff as well. We have Magic Map Eric, who did not ruin Ken Allen's score for King's Quest V, but he did put it on vinyl. And then we have Steve Coop down in the bar somewhere. Steve, blood pressure. Take it easy.
He's waving.
Waving us. Steve did a bunch of the artwork and color correction for the different vinyl records that we bootlegged the shit out of, basically. Just does amazing work. And then we have, of course...
And he's also working on Bob Holmes' current artwork, too.
Yes.
That's right.
I've got about half done. I should hope to finish it up tomorrow.
Oh my god, I didn't even know that. No, well, there we go.
Nice.
And we've also got
I
Sarah.
bet it's blue.
It's probably a little blue, yes. And we've got Sarah,
It's very blue.
who is a great singer.
She sure is.
Yes,
She is a great singer.
She
you.
did very famously. John Paul did a remix, sort of reworking of the opera aria from Gabriel Knight 2, and Sarah sang on it, and it is just phenomenal. Pronounced that way because that extends the vowel. So there we are. And of course we have the person who actually brought this whole thing together, who will not turn off his Madonna microphone. It keeps breathing into it. And that would be Alistair Gillett of the Sierra Music Central.
Give me just 1 second. I am contacting Neil with a Discord link.
He just came in the server.
You're kidding me.
Yeah, he did. Neil G.
Oh, that's
has
a good
landed.
problem to have.
Yeah. And
Well,
Rob
I'll
is
take it.
also here.
No, thank you for the introduction, Mr. Space Quest historian. I've been working with Sierra Music for over 20 years now myself. So that was a fun milestone at the end of August, and it made me think. There's a lot of wonderful composers out there who we are privileged enough to get to talk to today, and I always hear from the guys, and they always talk about 3 or 4 other guys, and I just sort of thought, well, it's 35 years since the old Sierra days, so why not moot the idea of getting everyone together and seeing where things are at. So I just started contacting people, and the interest was so positive that I ran with the idea, and here we are today. I'm very, very grateful for
Thank you
everyone
for
involved.
bringing everybody together. I just want to say 35 cheers for you too, because this wouldn't be happening if it weren't for you. So thank you.
Cheers very much. Also, you forgot to turn on your camera.
Me?
Yeah.
Yes, you.
Oh, shoot.
You can swear. It's okay.
We
It's my channel.
We want to see your face.
You'll never work in this town again.
A nice situation.
My settings have changed since the last time I did it.
There we go.
There he
Is
is.
Rob too? Did Rob not make it over?
He's in
He
here,
is
but
on his way.
he just isn't in the channel.
Okay.
And what time is
I
it where
think-
you are?
I think a lot of people haven't used Discord before, so it's
Zoom might be more of their home base, I think, for a lot of people.
Discord is not user friendly. Let's just be perfectly honest there. They try, they fail.
It's in the name.
Yeah.
the name should have clued us in.
It's better than TeamSpeak, however.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, well, yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Just to briefly tell everyone, this is going out on my Twitch channel and my YouTube channel, which means that you can swear all you want. I don't care. I don't give a fuck. Just go ahead.
Fuck
Yeah, fuck yeah. Yeah. So, while we await the arrivals of our last group of people, I suppose we could just start some quick introductions of the alumni that we've got here, because one of the fun things that happened was before the stream started, we had a little private meetup where all the guys could just get together. They haven't seen each other in a long time. Some of them have never seen each other at all. So they just had a little private get together on Zoom, and Kevin down here.
Josh, we got Josh.
Hey, Josh.
Oh, we got Josh. Hey.
Yeah, looks just like him.
Yeah, it does.
This is cheerful.
But yeah, the question was asked. Well, could we just give quick introductions, because some people I recognize, some people I don't, and it would be very nice to just sort of. Oh, Brian, sorry, I called you Kevin. I'm sorry, very very sorry. Brian asked, could we give quick
It
introductions?
probably worked for the Kevin.
Yeah.
I have worked with Kevin. Yes.
Only
So
a
many
few.
Where is that guy anyway?
Why did I? I'm sorry. It's past mid. It's going on 1 a.m. actually, and I have to be at work tomorrow. This is gonna be a great stream. Anyway, so the thing was, can we just give quick introductions so I can recognize some faces and all that? And that turned into what should have been the live stream. So we're just gonna
We're getting it up now. We have a great crew. We could do it in order. How about you, Chris Brayman, King's Quest? Go ahead.
Actually, I'm terribly sorry, but the way they did it in the private meetup was actually to go chronologically, which was super awesome. So we just went down the line, which also makes sense because we have the chronological order here up until where we stopped, which is Neil, who is still trying to join us. So
Well, Neil actually wasn't next, but
but Stuart was
Start on the
the
other
progenitor. So if you could give a perhaps slightly condensed introduction, that would be fantastic.
it doesn't have to be that much condensed.
Doesn't.
This is the wrong crowd for condensed.
Let's just say Stuart is the unspoken godfather of the Sierra music departments.
Well,
Or as Corey Cole said, he was the music department.
Oh yeah, I'll let him speak. Sorry, go ahead, Stuart.
Yeah, I was the music department of one. I had joined in 87, I think it was. I didn't. By the way, I didn't mention this in the other thing. I didn't work right away. I wasn't hired just to do sound. But my first programming project was just like writing the run length encoding algorithm to help compress the data onto the disks to save disk space. So I have a credit for that too, but it's unsung, But somehow I got pulled into writing these device drivers for this new thing they were doing on the PC, which was enabling sound and for all these different sound cards. And I wrote all those old Tandy, and the MT32 came out, and that was like amazing. And so MIDI was, the interface for professional musicians at the time, and it was becoming a standard for consumer electronics as well. And so wrote all of the new drivers for the new interpreter, which was SCI, which we were all switching over to at the time. And it was kind of exciting. And then, shortly into that, we hired Mark Siebert, who unfortunately isn't here right now, but so it was really us two who did some of the first games and integrations, and it was fun. And then just moving forward, I was only there till early '90, and we had hired Ken Allen and Rob Adesop. I don't know if Rob's joined yet, but
no, he's in the channel, but.
And it grew exponentially from there, which was nice to see. And I think so that the code and the drivers and everything that I originally wrote went on to live on to many, many more games beyond the time that I was there, which was kind of nice to see.
That's great.
Just on what Stuart was saying, I actually have an apology from Mark Siebert. So just before I forget to give that, he had a COVID case in the family in the last week, and he is also organizing a wedding. So he is unable to make today, but he sends his best, and his thanks to working with, I think, every single one of you fine gentlemen. And he will try to be on for the next stream, which we do hopefully around Christmas time.
So just to kind of wrap up, so after I left in '90, I left to go to another. I say another. I mean, Sierra felt like a startup, when I was there. Still, even though it had been around a while, I went to a startup in Vancouver, Canada, working on for a company called M Sound, which was doing add-in cards for the PC sound cards. DSP-based cards, which we did a couple of products and they never really took off. The company was eventually acquired and came back to the States, and I worked at Intel as a program manager. Not sound related, still kept my hands in it a little bit, but worked there for 23 years and I retired about a year ago. So, yeah.
And
I'm in
and you
Eastern
have
Washington.
Where
an
in
impressive.
Washington?
Oh, sorry.
Congratulations.
Oh yeah, because Eric is a local tour guide of the Seattle area, so he might. Be
Oh,
interested.
okay. No, I'm in southeastern Washington, Tri-Cities
Oh,
area.
I'm in Spokane.
Oh, okay. Not that
That's
far. Yeah, right.
Cool.
Everyone's from fucking Seattle here. Oh, and you also have an impressive amount of old music gear in the background,
Oh,
which
I
your chair is
have
currently
some.
obscuring.
Yeah.
It's behind Stuart's head at the moment.
Oh, there's some old, antiquated. Well, some of it's new, most of it's old. But
Is there an MT32 back there?
no, it's a SC
Sound canvas.
Sound canvas. Yeah.
Okay, right.
I have a
Just
CM. Have a CM32 though in the closet. Yeah.
Oh man.
Oh, the MT32.
I had a
try to find those.
CM64 too, but I sold that one. Yeah, I'm gradually selling equipment and guitars off. In fact, I was just in Seattle at Emerald City Guitars, and
Yeah, my friend Jay.
yeah, Jay, I talked to Jay.
Yeah.
They sold off a couple of my guitars I put on consignment there just recently.
Nice one.
So, yeah.
Best shop in the U.S.
Yeah.
So there you have it. Stuart.
I'm a rogue music man myself. Out in
Stuart
New
was
York.
the music department and hired. I think every Sierra
Help.
fan knows who Mark Siebert was and who he brought into the company, but few, unfortunately, like I said, unsung godfather of the music department was Stuart, who hired Mark. So that's.
And he also hired Ken and Rob, didn't we establish?
Yeah,
Pretty much gave the recommendation to Ken Williams that we should hire these guys.
Yeah, so chronologically speaking, it's on to Ken, I believe.
Thanks, Stuart. Before I give my little introduction, and I think I've given mine a number of times to this group, but when you were hired, did you take an IQ test?
No, I did not.
Oh, they told me it was standard.
Should I have?
I took one and I got stuck on one question and didn't know to finish the test, and scored miserably on it because I got stuck on one question. But when Rob comes on, I want to ask Rob if he took that test too. By the way,
he's just not on video.
I dug in the closet and I found this old relic.
Oh, I still have one. Oh, Japan, yeah.
Yeah, I think that was given to me when I got hired, and I still have it. So
I got a lot of that kind of stuff laying around.
So I showed up next, although I think my start. Rob got the offer letter before I got mine, but I actually showed up before he did. In end of April, early May of '89, and I had seen an ad in the Fresno Bee, video game composer or musicians needed, and I saw that and went, well, first of all, there's no such thing as a job that you make music for video games. It's just not a thing. And if it is a thing, it's probably part-time and only for a few months and all that. But I thought, hey, why not? So I actually thought, let me put together a piece of music real quick. I'll put it on this tape. I'll send it up and see if I get an interview. And sure enough, I got an interview. I met with Stuart and Mark and with a few others, and I thought, okay, this is a real job and this is a real company. I was familiar with Sierra because I'd played King's Quest, the original King's Quest, on PC Junior on the cart, so I was familiar with the company, but I just thought there's just no way that I'm gonna get a job offer. But one came and it was the best day of my life because I got to do two things that I loved: making video games, making music into one job. And often I would get to describe my job as I get to make funny noises for a living. So so that was my start at Sierra. The first game I worked on was The Colonel's Bequest, and I've told the story before, but the first piece of music I wrote for that game was a kind of a 50s film noir jazz piece, and I thought, well, it's a spy, not a spy game, but it's it's a PI game, and I played it for Roberta, and she didn't like it, and I thought, uh-oh, if she doesn't like my music, I'm not going to last long here. So I went and studied the music of the period for the 20s for the Colonel's Bequest, came back, rewrote the intro, and she said, okay, you're on the right track. So that was my introduction to Sierra. After that, both Rob came in like, a week later, and one of the first things we did after I finished Colonel's Bequest is we were working on some of the game arts, translating the Japanese music to American. Got to work on Space Quest 4. Rob and Mark and I both, all three of us worked on that game. Went on to King's Quest 5, where Mark and I did most of the music, if not all of it, and then did some other things. Castle Dr. Brain, the Oilswell game, a few other little one-offs, and then after about 18 games, I decided that I was going to put Sierra in my rearview mirror, so I went over and started doing music independently, and I did some music for Accolade, for a few other game companies, and then Ed Heimbuckle, the former CFO of Sierra, formed up Tsunami Media, and I was among the founding employees and got to do all the music for all their games. I think I did 9 games while I was there, plus all the sound design and all the speech audio file editing, which Mark taught me how to do, by the way, when I was at Sierra. So I owe that to him. Left Tsunami and went to Interplay and became a game producer, where I got to work on the Star Trek games, which I've told the story over and over again, having worked with most of the original cast, including Bill Shatner and his famous "Don't tell me how to do it, it sickens me" line. After being at Interplay for a while, the culture was changing, so I left to go to Midway, and that's where Rob was after Rob had left Sierra, and Aubry, and also Orpheus had ended up there. They were working on Midway games, and I was hired at a time when Midway was trying to take their coin-op catalog and make it available on the PS2 and the other platforms that were available at the time. The Xbox was just coming out. So I got to work on one of the first Xbox titles that Midway had released. There was a bit of a shakeup, and it was kind of a toxic culture. So I ended up leaving Midway and going to Atari. And at Atari, I did a bunch of small games and earned my credibility and got assigned to the Roller Coaster Tycoon franchise as the producer. So I got to be part of one of the tent poles of the industry. Midway had its problems, went back to the Bay Area and started working for another game studio from THQ. They had problems. It just seemed like problems seemed to follow me around, or maybe I was the cause, I don't know. But I ended up, my last game in the video game industry was at Tryon Games, where I was part of an MMO, and was there for about 5 years and was doing really great guns. And then they had another game that had to make a certain ship date, like, hey, we all know that. So they had to take a third of the payroll from the game I was on and lay off those people and hire more people to this other game down in San Diego. We were in the Bay Area, and I got laid off. So I thought, where am I going to go next? And my wife, who's from Las Vegas, said, hey, I'd like to live in Las Vegas. Do you think we could live there? So I did. We moved there. We moved here, where I am now, and I started working in the casino software industry for some of the big companies that make slot machine games and the software that tracks that manages the financials for these casinos. And then through a quirk of just an oddball quirk, a friend of mine said, hey, my husband works for the New York Times and they need a project manager. Would you be interested? And I said, would I? And so now I'm there as a project manager, New York Times, working in the Wirecutter division, which is their version of Consumer Reports. And it's probably a job that I'll have the rest of my life. I'm having so much fun. So that's me, gosh, in 5 minutes.
Just to tack on to Ken's credits there, he also just did music for the Space Quest 2 guys.
Oh, that's right.
Space Venture shipped, or not shipped, sorry, released to backers in the last week or so.
Yeah, we got together at the beginning of the project, and I expressed interest, and I told them I'd be willing to do the music for Comp, and I had to relearn composing for games again because I hadn't done it for all that time since the last piece of music I wrote for a game was for Descent. I had written a piece for their game, and
which was kind of 1995 for context.
Okay, yeah, there you go. So it'd been a minute, and so I had to relearn the whole technology, and I got my introduction to the VST technology. I was strictly a MIDI guy, and I just finished putting my final tune into the mix of files on the 10th of September 10th, and I've done a couple of sound effects tweaks in here and there, but no, my latest game is Space Venture, coming soon.
Nice. and that segues into Mr. Addersulp, who was hired before Ken, but started a week later, I believe, was the story. And is muted.
And can't hear Rob.
Sorry. Oh, it's Discord and it's stupid audio settings again. They are not user-friendly.
I thought I heard him for a second there.
Yeah. Let's just see if I have him muted. No, I don't.
Maybe there's push to talk. I use that. Is that a default setting?
The other thing is it'll screw up audio settings. Sometimes you've got to go into user settings and then go down to voice and video and make sure the input device is correct. I've had it change it randomly on me.
It does that, and you have to disable. Oh, I heard that.
Is it? I heard Rob there.
Was that Rob? It's a nice
big for a
Discord
second.
look. Yep. We're professionals. Don't try this at home.
Well, while Rob is sorting out his sound, I just want to state publicly, and I said this before, but I owe a debt of gratitude to Stuart for seeing promise and giving me the green light to come on board. And I would not have had this long career in the video game industry and the successes that I've had and working for the big companies that I had not Stuart seen something. So I really appreciate you, Stuart. We connected again like last fall, just to say hi, and not enough time obviously to catch up, but I'm glad we live in a world where we can talk on camera now.
Oh,
definitely.
Amazing.
Well, the chronological order has collapsed, so maybe
we'll
move on, and when Rob comes back, we'll skip chronologically.
I have a quick apology from Neil Grandstaff as well, who was hiding from a family barbecue, and the family has since caught him, so he will not be attending, but hopefully he will attend later in the year.
And I think chronologically after Rob, we went to Mr. Chris Brayman. Oh, we see Rob. We see the Rob.
Oh, hey, Rob. I see you.
Who's Rob?
Rob's almost here.
Almost there.
Still can't hear him.
Dang.
Come on,
Stupid
Rob.
Discord.
While Rob figures that out, we will go to Chris Brayman.
Yes.
I can go
Mr.
real quick. So
that's fine. Hey, Chris.
A lot of what I said to the other group, and I'm going to skip kind of past that. But the things I didn't say, when I first got hired, we were living in San Francisco, and I saw the ad in the San Francisco Chronicle or something. Asked a friend who had a PC to show me one of the games, which was, I think, Space Quest 3. Was that the first one that had MIDI on it, the Bob Siebenberg one?
Yep, one of the first ones,
It completely blew me away. I'm like, oh my God, if they're doing this, I would love to be a part of this. And so got to take the interview, got the job. My wife stayed in San Francisco for about a month, and the first month was kind of boot camp with Ken and Rob, showing me all kinds of stuff that I'm supposed to do. Like, I had never edited a waveform before, and we were editing waveforms and making Amiga stuff. And I went back home after that month and sleeping in San Francisco, and woke up. I didn't really wake up. You know how you're dreaming sometime and you're doing stuff? And I knew what I was doing. I was turning the bedroom light on and off, on and off, on and off, on and off. And my wife woke up and said, "What the hell are you doing?" And I said, I'm changing the frequency. And she's like, "What?" And I realized, wow, this job is going to affect me.
Oh man, I can totally sympathize with that.
It was weird, but it was a good start, and we had 2-3 wonderful years there, and a wonderful 30-year career after that, and really, just like Ken said, it was because of the people who I got to work with, Ken and Rob, and later Rudy and Eric Hart, and just everybody involved with the whole glorious thing. It was an amazing place to live. It was an amazing place to have. My first child was born there in Fresno, or have to drive down the hill to Fresno Hospital and back up. It was just an amazing time, and I appreciate that all the people I got to work with. I appreciate the fact that people loved the music. It was just an amazing opportunity. Can't say anything else.
I don't know if this is your crowning achievement per se, but I think the work that most people are familiar with your name from, that was a weird sentence. I apologize. It's very late. The thing that most people remember Chris Brayman for is King's Quest VI, which was arguably the best King's Quest game. And in our midst, we have a bald person who is desperately in love with that soundtrack, even so much that he has begun a reorchestration of it for a potential vinyl release, which is something we're very much looking forward to. He's already done that with Ken Allen and Mark's King's Quest V, and is now looking to King's Quest VI.
How fun.
What the hell? What just happened? Discord crashed.
And I'm loving every note of it. Your style is amazing, sir.
Wow.
Thank you.
Before we go on, Trolls, I'd like to ask Stuart something. Before I was hired, before Rob was hired, there were already MIDI soundtracks for Police Quest and for King's Quest. There was like the Jerry Goldberg for King's Quest 4.
William Goldstein.
I'm sorry, William Goldstein.
No relation.
Right.
Just coincidental.
And Jan Hammer for Police Quest and Bob Siebenberg.
No.
Wait.
Bob didn't do any soundtracks until Space Quest 3.
Right, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You were there writing the MIDI interfaces.
Mark was there during that time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But Sierra had hired them as composers before they hired us.
Right. Yes. Yeah, that's true.
Do you have any stories to tell about working with them and their material?
It was nothing out of the ordinary. I mean, I do remember a trip to Los Angeles, to Hollywood, to meet with William Goldstein. That was interesting. He had a little home studio at the time, and which was right about when people were starting to do home studios. They were moving away from the big budget studios, and he was a Hollywood composer. I forget the films he worked with, but it was pretty easy for those guys because they were already working with MIDI, and we only had to give them a list of the limitations of okay, here's what you have to work with. Here's the voices. Here's the instruments. So it wasn't too difficult because they were already pretty familiar with the technology. I think it was just setting the limitations of what they could do, and it was strictly MIDI and just a set of instruments they had to work with. Unlike what you can do today, fully digital. But and then same with Bob Siebenberg, who lived just kind of down the road from Sierra at the time, so it was pretty convenient. And same kind of thing with him. He, give him the set of rules, and he just came up with the soundtrack.
And for anybody who's not familiar, Bob Siebenberg is of Supertramp.
Yeah.
And why am I misremembering? I thought Jan Hammer had done Police Quest.
He did Police Quest 3 after Stuart left.
It was a bit in later. Yeah, I know he did.
And Craig Safan was the other famous composer that came around that time as well.
And then later we had Michel Legrand and
Michel Legrand, yeah, Charles has beat me to it.
Oi. So that was Chris Brayman. That was Ken Allen.
Quick story, since Rob Addersolp is in. What do you call it?
He's off to beat up his computer.
Yeah, he's in flux at the moment. He mentioned that he played in a band with Jesse Siebenberg, which is Bob's son, who also plays with Supertramp these days. So,
I don't know if you can hear me now. Can you?
Yes,
I can hear Rob now.
yes.
All right, Rob's here.
We have Rob.
Machines. Sorry,
Rob
guys.
has
I had to
arrived.
switch machines.
Oh, I'm very sorry.
Glad to have
Very
you
sorry.
Yeah,
While
sound
you were
guy,
away,
able to figure out sound. I always get that
Discord
joke.
crashed and everything is just a fucking mess. So welcome back, Mr. Addersalp. Please enlighten us with your tale of Sierra.
Oh, my tale. Oh, okay. So it started out with like kind of where I heard you saying there about Supertramp guys. But I was in a band with his son, with Jesse, and I was going back and forth, up and down from down in Sanger, driving up to Oakhurst. It was like an hour and 15 minutes. So we were going back and forth, practicing, and I'd stop in the deli there, saw the paper. I had no idea they were, and I found a classified ad there, and so I sent him my resume. And the funny thing is, when I was up in Bob's studio, I saw the MT32 there on his desk, and I heard, oh, he's like making video games, but I still had no clue who Sierra or any of that was, and we were going back and forth. So I responded to the ad, and sure enough, got the call back and went for an interview and showed up with a little cassette tape, threw it in their cassette deck, and Stuart liked it. And I kind of feel Stuart was kind of a pull for me when after hearing it there, they got me in. Ended up talking with Ken that day as well, and then got a phone call like a week later, and they offered me the job. So then I started on May 15th. Came in. The first thing I did was that Hoyle Book of Games, the very first one, and did it with a little piano tune at the beginning. And then the next thing after that, I started in on the whole conversion world with like Laser Shoot Larry. I did that and did it on all the platforms because I took all Mike Dennis music and took it to every platform they ever put that on. So it was fun on the Amiga, I tell you, with all the program switches. You remember that, Stuart, right? Doing the drum tracks with doing a kick and hat mix and then a kick and snare.
For the composers,
Right.
that's called paying your dues.
Yeah, so I mean, there's 4 DACs on that Amiga, and we were doing programs changes for every drum combination possible. Where the samples were the kick and snare and hat, and then just kick and snare, and then just kick, and just, you know what I mean?
Not exceeding voices, and
right. So the fun days. So that, believe it or not, that helped me out for when I finally stepped to the next job and I was doing Super Nintendo stuff, because it's kind of found that same kind of realm of an Amiga. It was just 4 more DACs. It was 8 instead of 4. But anyways, going through it all, it was fun living up there in the hills. Moved up there. I got married, had a child there, and then now my child's 30 years old all of a sudden. And but yeah, so then went on through that and, did all that MIDI stuff. It was cool being able to do the police quest and rescore that. I don't know if many of you heard it really, but it was fun for me. I got to rock out on it. Beyond that, I did that Island of Dr. Brain, kind of took on that whole little islandy reggae feel groove with the sound canvas. And I'll be honest, for me, the biggest letdown of it all is when the sound canvas came out. Because we were in that MT32, ripping it apart, getting in its guts and doing all we could, and all of a sudden the sound canvas comes out and it's all flushed down the toilet.
Yeah.
And that was horrible. I mean,
that's right. I forgot we were customizing a lot of the voices, the instruments. I mean, yeah.
Right.
Patches,
and I really dug into that part of it and really liked it. And then
standard MIDI ruined it all. Yeah.
Yeah. When I first got
Damn
the
you,
box,
MIDI consortium.
I was wondering, well, how do we edit this thing?
Roland, it's all Roland, making money. But just for context for people watching, the Roland Mt-32, which is what Sierra composed for from 1988 to 1991 and a half, or 1992 and a half, sorry. They customized the sound palette of 128 instruments for each single game, actually. And the guys like Rob and Chris and everyone else wrote their own patches. And when General MIDI came out, it was just the same 128 instruments and their samples on the sound canvas. And yeah, you had to use those instruments and you couldn't customize them at all. So
I would also credit Sierra with actually inspiring the LAPC1, which was the card version of the. I don't know if a lot of people know this, but I was actually there for the meeting. We flew to Los Angeles. We met with Tom Beckman, who was co-CEO, or he was the CEO in the U.S. for Roland, and the CEO from Japan was there in the meeting, Ken Williams, and we were describing what we were doing with the MT32 and how great it would be if this was like built into the computers. And so I remember the CEO from Japan didn't speak a lot of English, and he wrote literally on the back of a napkin a drawing of like the LAPC1. Like, well, we could put all this, essentially onto a card to go in the computer, and they ran with it, and they turned it out in like a few months' time. It basically took all the chips from the MT32 and stuck it on a card with a PCI interface. So, yeah.
Wow,
and a little known fact. What were you saying, Rob?
I think it was called the Rap 10 at first, wasn't it?
Rap?
It's a different, later cut.
Oh, that was a different version.
Yeah.
Okay.
The Rap 10 was some sort of basic general MIDI thing.
Yeah, the LAPC1, I discovered when we were working on the King's Quest game, when Mark and I were working on that, I discovered that the audio outs were reversed. They were labeled wrong.
They rushed it to market.
They rushed it to market, yeah. So everything we had written for the MT32, and there was any pinning back and forth, there was there was an unfortunate.
I think it had more sound effects or something too. Or
it's the CM. It's actually a CM32L on a card.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Oh, here's
the
Rap 10 is an SC7 on a card, by the way, Rob.
Yeah, I have a quick question on that. The customized, because I came. I can't remember sound whatever, like general MIDI. That's what you got. But what did you mean by customizing? That sounds really amazing. It almost is like you guys went backwards. Yeah. What can you load your own samples?
Downloads.
Yeah, you can create your own using a patch editor and load them on, and we actually put them into the game. So when you booted up your game, it downloads the patches.
No,
there was no samples, Brian, but you could write your own. Yeah. The MT32 did a combo of synthesis and samples, so it was part based on the synthesis and part based on the PCM samples.
That is fascinating. Learn something new every day after 30 years of doing
I think Stuart, you're the one who also discovered we could put a custom message on the display of the MT32.
We were talking about that the other day.
Oh.
Yeah.
Is there?
Yeah.
There's a story I'm going to bring up later once we've got
that is some
everybody
nerdy
else.
stuff, you guys.
I think
nerdy.
I programmed most
awesome.
of the text that went in whatever got scrolled across there. I think I was the one who put it in there.
Someone else must have done it after you left, those two.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
All right.
There's a quick question.
Who do we have next?
Hang on, before we go, there's a quick question from chat for primarily Adasop and oh my God, where's my brain right now? Hi, Chris Brayman. I'm sorry, my brain is turning to mush. Anyway, there's a question because you both mentioned that you did conversions for the Amiga, and the Sierra games on the Amiga are for the most part just dreadful abominations of nature.
Sorry,
really
Corey.
Yes, but we're really interested to know how the how you take a MIDI track and convert that into a 4chan mod for a Sierra game. Do you just recreate it in mod, or was that like an import feature? Could you export MIDI and import it into the mod tracker? What happened?
I think Rob was kind of was making me remember certain things about it, about having to collapse sounds down into combinations of sounds just to try to get the voice count down to 4. But as I remember, we didn't convert them to mod. I think Stuart
it's still MIDI.
Must have had a complete MIDI driver, MIDI. So we didn't go to mod. But yeah, everything I learned.
We had digital samples though on
digital samples that had to be loaded up. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why I learned to turn my lights on and off. If I remember right, looping those instruments was a real pain because you couldn't. It had to be lined up or something. You couldn't just loop them anywhere. Somehow they would sound fine and sound whatever it was we were using, and then you get them on the machine and they didn't, and they click. But wow.
Oh yeah.
Sounds like using an old hardware sampler to me.
Well,
the thing that I recall on like Space. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's
No,
no. Yeah,
the-
I
when
was
you
going to
mentioned the-
mention Space Quest 3. Yes, I was going to mention Space Quest 3 and 4 because it does sound like mod music on the Amiga. So so I'm really interested to know that it's actually not, mod tracker music. That's new information to me as well. Rob,
Tried extracting the files before Trolls, and it's just like exactly the same resources for the most part.
Really?
I can tell you it was the Tandy 3 tracks with the drum parts, what it was.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
That sounds right. That sounds right.
That is a very, very helpful explanation there, Rob.
Nice.
And
Okay,
then you're
sorry.
doing that multi-sample with the drums, as we were talking about earlier, where you got the kick and snare sampled together, and you're switching through each combination for the drum sound. So you're going through your drum track had like 1,000, program changes in it, because every single hit was a different sample you're calling.
Oh God.
I love it.
To
Brian, what were you
simulate
going to say
a drum
before?
set,
Oh God.
Oh no, I was just recalling because I have bits and pieces of the memory, and I remember Voyatra, and I think it was Space Quest 6. All right, this is after the 3 and 4. It was like, I think it was like a Mac version, and I remember the voice count, and it's again another like sort of flashback to like PTSD kind of thing where like there was no forgiveness, and where I remember editing the length of notes. Maybe, and I don't even remember the composer. Maybe it was Neil's music.
It was Neil.
Okay, so it must have been Neil's music, and then I had to collapse it down to 4 tracks.
It was
but none of
Josh's
them-
game too.
Oh, okay. So, none of them had to overlap. I remember, and Voyatra was awful.
I still use it, by the way, Brian.
Oh, is that right? Okay, I'm sorry.
No. It is awful.
No, I found a version that would work on Windows 10, so I'm very happy.
Wow.
Really? What
You're
kind of
muted,
hardware
by the
again?
way. You're muted, Brian.
So anyway,
Hey, Rob.
sorry for.
When we did Atari ST also, was that the same thing?
The Atari ST.
Yeah, they were also MIDIs too.
They used the MIDI port, so we were able to use because.
You could use the MT32 with the Atari, couldn't you?
Right. But I think it had internal sine waves, kind of like a Tandy or something like that.
Oh, really? I thought it was.
You could use it you could use it with multiple drivers.
Wow.
Instead of, I think the Amiga, you just got the 4 voice, right? The 4 instruments.
Right, exactly.
But the Mac we did a lot like the Atari.
I'll tell Brian this story another time, but Space Quest 6 actually has a weird thing on the Mac version.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's another story for another time.
Okay, that's fine.
But we really should move on to another composer.
Yeah, we should go on.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
That's what I've been trying to. Yes. Let's move on to. Actually, Alistair, you're more familiar with the chronology here. I'll let you pick.
What's either
the
probably Robert, but maybe Rudy.
Yeah, it might be Rudy.
Can you hear me?
Rudy.
Yes.
Rudy.
I can hear you,
My
Rudy.
mic on? Can you? Good. Yeah, because it was complaining that my mic wasn't on, and I was confused as to why. But anyway, good. So it came to Sierra in March of 1992, and I was assigned to bother Chris Brayman and put in on him. He had a nice little office in there working all night, and then he had to share a room with me. And poor Chris, he was instructed to teach me the ropes, basically, how Sierra does things with MIDI and how to take other composers' scores and dumb them down, if you will, that's my words, to lesser voiced devices like the PC speaker, monophonic, and then the Tandy,
Ad-lib.
free voice, and other things like that. And I thought Chris was an excellent teacher. He but he had a big incentive too. It's because he was working on a game with a tight deadline, and and he needed this work that, to be done. So we did, and I did some other games in the company as well, taking what Chris taught me, and did some of those.
Quest for Glory.
I'm sorry.
Quest for Glory 3.
Yes. Well, I got assigned Quest for Glory 3. That was my first big game, and we only had a few months to do it, as it turns out. And so I started, and Mark Siebert came in and dropped Chris probably might remember this. He dropped a sound canvas on the desk there and said, well, this is what you're going to use for Quest for Glory 3. So
wow.
For me, I thought, wow, that's great, because to me it was a really nice sounding machine. And at that time, being new in the game industry, I didn't have any past loves to other devices at the moment. And I liked that I didn't have to develop my own patches and just go down the general MIDI list. So that seemed like this was going to work out pretty well. But still had to do some of the dumbing down, even of that game later anyway. So I didn't get away with it all, but I did get help from Aubry to do that stuff, to do those conversions. Exactly a year to the day that I was hired, I was laid off when they had that big company laid off. And Rob remembers that day, I'm sure. So I started working with Accolade. I did the Speed Racer game. That melody was written by, I wish I knew the composer's name, but the Speed Racer cartoon that was popular on television. They told me to take that theme and then rewrite in any way that I wanted to, rewrite mainly the chordal and rhythmic things to make it fit in the environments that Speed Racer was going to be racing his vehicle in. That would be in a country or desert environment or a big city environment or some other places. So I wrote several versions of that well-known theme to fit these racing environments. And I did a game there that was never released. It was a fighting game. Cybernauts, I think is what they were going to call it. And that was a pretty fun game to work on. I'm really sad that didn't actually make it to market. But my job there I was there about almost 5 years. My job there for the most part, though, was to review demo tapes and MIDI things that other composers would send in and hoping to get some work from Accolade as freelance people. And I was supposed to take those ones that I thought would match certain producers in the company who was working on different projects and try to tell these composers, this is the producer you should work for, and vice versa. And that worked sometimes, and sometimes it didn't, because you can't really always convince everybody who has a personal opinion about something that they should do what they really don't feel like doing. But that's what I did for those several years. And then a couple years after that, I started working for Ed Heinbachel, who used to be Sierra Online's chief financial officer. And as Ken was telling us in the past session that we had, I think Dynamics was the name of the company that he had.
Tsunami.
No? Tsunami, thank you. Yeah. So he had a company called Tsunami, which I didn't work for, but when he changed it over to Visual Purple was his new company name to work for government projects. And I was with them up till 2013, 2014, I think. And I became a teacher. I started doing some teaching work where my kids were in high school at the time. So that's pretty much what the range of my experience with the game world was. I didn't come into the industry as a gamer. I saw the ad in the newspaper, like somebody else mentioned they did, and they wanted somebody who knew something about computers, something about music. And I had a degree in music from school, and saw that ad and thought, well, so yeah, I know something about music. At the time, I had a job at San Francisco State University as an IT person for the journalism department, which was kind of a boring little gig. And so with those two skills that I had, I answered an ad. But actually, before I answered Mark Siebert's ad, I answered Tom Reddick's ad. Some of you might remember him. He worked at Broderman, I believe. And we had a good chat and sat down, and it was very friendly. And he said, Rudy, he said, the thing is, I need somebody who really knows games like right now how to do this stuff. So I don't think I can hire you at the moment, but I think you could do it. So if you think you're interested in this, why don't you just keep your eyes on the and ears out and kind of study some of the things that we do. And it wasn't even a month later I saw the ad for Sierra, and then talked to Mark Siebert, and that was a good chat. But I had to call him at least once a week for about 8 weeks, I think. And finally he said, "Oh, okay, you're hired."
I mean, this sounds like a very familiar story now. Musician who's off gigging and being a professional musician, or even just
or being a teacher of some kind,
sees ad in paper, joins Sierra with the hopes of creating music for all these wonderful computer games, gets stuck doing conversions. Seems to be the running theme.
Sorry to interrupt, Trolls. It was Michiru Oshima that did the original Speed Racer theme.
Ah, yes.
Oh, thank you.
Sure.
And the famous meme, huh? But the whole sound conversion thing is a nice segue, of course, into Mr. Robert Holmes, who also was a touring, gigging musician who got hired at Sierra and got stuck doing conversions.
Yeah, it's so true. And, it's funny because Chris and Dan Kaler, were the guys who were assigned to me. And I remember coming in, I had been a studio guy in LA and done some touring and stuff. And actually my wife was hired at Sierra as a creative director. And so I moved to Oakhurst with her, and then we promptly split up. And I found, here I am, I'm in this little mountain town. There's not a lot to do, and I want to be close to my daughters. So it's like, well, I guess I should try and work, at the same company she's working at, which I'm not sure was a great idea, but, I ended up getting it. Yeah, so, I got a tape to Mark, and we had lunch, and he was like, well, geez, you've done a lot of stuff. What do you know about MIDI? And I was basically a guitar player who played a little piano, and I said, really? I don't know anything about MIDI. I can see the wrinkles on Chris's face because, he and Dan were assigned to basically teach me the ropes and teach me about MIDI and teach me about doing conversions. And, I remember them looking at each other kind of like, oh my God, this is going to take forever. But I think I did that for like 6 months. And then I got my first review with Mark, and he gave me a really nice review, and it looked like, things were going well. And I said, well, I'm going to leave the department because I got this opportunity to take one of the producer jobs. And he said, well, I just gave you a great review. And I said, I'm sorry, but, I'm a single dad. I need to make more money. So I took the producer job, and my first assignment was Hoyle Classic Cards. And I thought, I've got this tiny little budget. I know what, I'll hire myself as the composer, and that way I can control the music budget. So I did that. So I did the producing gig and the composing gig, and it was, first half of the day I would be the producer, and then I'd have my keyboard behind the desk, and in the afternoons I'd turn around and write music. And that worked out okay. So then I got assigned to be a producer for Jane for some educational. Josh, you might remember what it was. It was an educational game that never ended up getting produced.
Could it have been EcoQuest?
Yeah, it might have been. I think it was an earlier version before it sort of morphed into EcoQuest. And, Jane and I kind of hit it off, and I could tell, she wanted to do something else. And, she was at least open to using me, even though I had criticized her lyrics for Girl in the Tower. And
as you should have, rightly.
Yeah, well, probably one of the worst lyrics ever written. But so we started working on we would walk around Bass Lake every day and talk about her ideas for GK, and thankfully that ended up getting greenlit, and so I was able to be the producer and composer for that. And with the same thing, I'd kind of split my day, and that seemed to work out really well. And then we started GK2, and I got a call from a friend who worked for Paul Allen up in Seattle, and he said, we heard that you work with Jane Jensen, and we know she can be a little challenging, and we're looking for somebody to work with Sting and who can go head to head with a big personality like Sting and has a musical background. So I went up and interviewed and got the job, and I had to come back and tell Jane, hey, I'm sorry, I'm leaving the project. And at the time, we were already a couple, and I'm also leaving town.
No.
And so that went over really well. But
she's not in the room right now, is she?
She's not. She's upstairs.
And then you left the room with your bags and said, by the way, Girl in the Tower is still the most awful lyric ever written.
Yeah, right.
Slam the door. I'll tell you, the chat exploded when you said that, by the way.
That was the sound of 1,000 hearts breaking around the world.
Mine included.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, I could see the look on Steve's face when he said.
So I moved up to Seattle, and I spent a lot of my time, going between Seattle, New York, and England, doing that for about 3 years with Sting. And, as they got toward the end of GK2, Jane said, is there some way you could still do the music? So I had a 2-week vacation, and I sort of locked myself in my attic in Seattle and did the music for GK2 and same kind of scenario with GK3, because by that time I had kind of actually moved into more of a producer career overall, and I did that pretty much for 20 years in Seattle in various tech environments and agency environments, and really hadn't done more game music until Jane and I did Pinkerton Road, which was where we had our farm in Pennsylvania. And, we did 3 games there. We did a game about our bulldogs, Lola and Lucy's Big Adventure, which was kind of a labor of love. And then also, Mobius, Empire Rising, and the 20th anniversary GK1 remake. So, yeah, and all of those, was really interesting to get back into games, both as a producer and as a composer after 20 years. It was kind of challenging, but it was a good experience. And I've been sort of dabbling in the GK music world ever since again.
Yeah, you got a project that's just releasing to backers. Has it released already to backers?
It did. It released this week. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's going to come out to the public on October 1st?
That's right, October 1st. And, I feel really good about it. I spent pretty much this whole year, trying to write GK music, which was always fun because you kind of go back, visit your old self. And some of it you're glad to see, and some of it is really, not pretty. But
Use some of the old instruments that you used on GK2 as well?
I did. I used some of the old Kurzweils and Korg things that I had used on GK2 and GK3.
Nice.
And sort of did a mix of a lot of old hardware as well as, of course, VSTs and things. But I'm happy with the way it came out, and it was great to see the community, and of course a lot of these folks who are on here be really so supportive and so helpful in making that happen.
Nice.
And we're thankful that you're still making music, my friend.
Absolutely.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
gray matter. Don't forget about gray matter.
Oh, and gray matter. You're right. Yeah, I totally forgot about gray matter, which actually is probably one of my favorites, because at the time I was doing a band with my daughter, the Scarlet Furies, and we had just kind of finished recording a bunch of stuff. And Jane said, "Hey, we should put the Furies in the game." So we just kind of took a bunch of stuff we'd already recorded and put it in the game, and it just happened to kind of work really well. And, people seemed to appreciate it, which was cool.
Nice. Very nice. So that is the segue onto Mr. Open Bar himself, Brian Min. Sorry. We should explain the open bar in the background first. We had to wonder because on the on the tiny thumbnail.
Oh, he's moved. He's moved.
He's moved slightly, but it looks like a tiny little volcano. I think it's just mirrored.
Oh yeah, no,
it's
just getting dark in my room. So yeah. Are you guys able to hear me? Okay, I can't.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good.
Crystal clear.
Using this anyway. Oh no, thanks for having me on here. I only had a very small, stint from, was it 95 or 96? I was only there for about a year.
95 to 97.
Oh, 97. Oh, good God. I don't know how long I left.
Well, you might, Lighthouse released in 90, well, it could be 96 actually. I take it back.
Yeah, that was that Myst clone, if I recall.
It was.
So that's what I remember. But before that, I worked, I was hired to, like I mentioned before, as some kind of a Foley editor, but I studied classical music. I had a music degree from UCLA with orchestration background. And so I was familiar with classically trained. I was classically trained and had that. And so that whole thing about the job posting, I think I think it was my wife who found it. At the time we were not married, but she found this gig. Hey, isn't this sort of like what you need? You can actually do something with your music degree. At the time, this was a big decision because I was headed to actually to get my master's, and I was headed to a film school. Is what I wanted to do, but I already had so much school loan debt. Yeah. That do I want to go into more debt or do I want to get a job? And so I think, I don't know, in hindsight, maybe it was a 50-50. I think it was, the monetarily, at least I had a job, but psychologically, I think it was pretty traumatic because, that was like my first gig and I definitely learned a lot on that job. But when I got there, they just sort of dropped me off I was at the deep end and you're like, hey, you're editing. We have all these door openings and closing in this game. And I was really not a gamer, honestly. I don't know too much about games, but there was all these tiny little movies, and then it kind of looks like film. And so what your job is to like take these sound effects and put door closing and door opening. And I'm like, that's cool. But I think there was like thousands of them.
Was this Phantasmagoria, Brian?
I'm sorry, yeah, this is Phantasmagoria. So that's what I did for the first 3 months when I moved to a whole new city and that's what I did, and I was feeling pretty miserable doing that, and sort of contemplating my existence. But along the way, I got to just start to acquire a lot of, in fact, hindsight, a lot of skills that I so treasure now. Including
He's a master
working with
opening doors now.
Yeah,
absolute
things like
king.
that. So things like that, worked on so many different titles, even though I only did a little bit on each. It was just a tremendous experience for somebody who just, graduated from college. and just learned about how music technology worked. Before then I was just kind of a, like a classically trained musician, really didn't know a whole lot about technology, but there is where I learned MIDI, Voyetra, voice limitations. And then I had opportunities to like introduce Pro Tools. That's an entire another story. It was like a 4-track digital audio editor, which was something that was not really, now that is obviously, workstation is insane. But back in the day, editing digital audio was not widely known, and it was in some of the highest kind of like music studios. I got to work with that. One of the first, I think, systems as a gaming studio that owned like a Pro Tools system back then. So it was just a tremendous learning experience. Also, briefly, I got to work. I think I met Robert Holmes at the Christmas party, but I never actually met you face to face because you were like, you would send notes on Gabriel. This is Gabriel Knight 2 now. I'm sorry, I'm jumping back and forth on my third or fourth game. And you send notes and things like that. And, he was sort of a terrifying figure, if I recall, like, oh, this composer from on high, he sends notes, you better make sure that he's pleased. And I remember meeting him at the Christmas party, and that Christmas party was insane. The Sierra threw some amazing Christmas parties. The
Tenaya Lodge. Yeah.
What was that?
At the Tenaya Lodge, right in the snowstorm.
Yeah, something like it was just really impressive for somebody who was just like I was like the poor, in-debt college grad in my first job, and I remember the fireplace. It was amazing. But I met you, and of course Jay and I knew that backstory that I told you guys in the hallway. But I met you for the time. You were super generous and super just very friendly, and so I remember going, wow, he's not bad. He's a nice guy, and I fond memories of that. And then that's kind of like my story with Sierra. And so thank you so much for having me on, because I got to sort of ride down memory lane. It's just actually insane, just all the memories that's kind of coming back here and there. So.
Do you have, just before we move on, Brian, do you have any stories about the game you actually composed, Lighthouse?
I'm trying to forget.
I would like to let you.
I don't. All I remember is I think it was just make it sound like Mist, or something like that, and I tried to just.
Whose direction was that?
That was the whole design document, as I recall.
Yeah, I think. Well, yeah, that was. It was the producer, and I can't remember his name. He was also very generous too. He was a new producer on that project, which I don't remember the name, but he was the one who sort of guided me towards what kind of music I should write, and that was really it. And I just kind of sort of dabbled in it. I tried to use as much, kind of leverage my background as a classically trained composer or whatever musician, and trying to use organic instruments. And I can't remember, was that MIDI or was that Red Book? Was it?
It was neither. In fact, it was Sierra's very, very, very compressed digital audio. Although Lighthouse has some tracks that are less compressed, which is an odd thing that I'll ask you about another time.
Yeah. So that was what that was. And then I moved on, so got a different job.
Actually, there's another thing you need to talk about before we move on. You've got a very, very impressive resume post Sierra, and it would be awesome to hear about some of that.
No, it was similar to that one thing where I tried to get out of gaming, but I just couldn't get out of it. But mostly, yeah. From then on, I moved on to just a smaller company, but probably my big highlight was working with the folks at Sony. So I got to be part of that group. Initially, I was just hired as a contractor, writing some music, but a lot of that had to do with my interest in film, because that's really what I wanted to do. So some of the early Sony games, there was a game called Siphon Filter, which is like this pretty popular game. And a lot of that was sort of like CIA, like it's like James Bond meets Jason Bourne kind of thing. And so I got to do a few. I'm sorry?
I said I've heard of it, and I only play adventure games.
Oh
yeah, me too.
Yeah. So they had a bunch of movies, basically cinematic cutscenes, and then they would introduce kind of like the things that the Sierra was known for. They would do these movies, and then and then it would go into the game, right? It would tell the story. And so I had the opportunity to, with some film background, did this mix where it wasn't, kind of try to make it more Hollywood. So I started to design some stuff and kind of made things, larger than life. Instead of like a door slam, you would put big reverse explosions and, anvil hits and other kinds of things that was more designy and kind of at the time. And so the folks there thought, they liked it. And so eventually I was able to get a contract gig there and started to do a lot of work. And then eventually that led to my gig at Sony San Diego, which was, they were sort of what's called a cinematic post. Chris, is that what that was called, right? You were there with me. Yeah, it was a cinematic post. And so we basically...
a lot of videos.
Yeah, we were basically like the Sony internal like farmhouse where they just jammed as many trailers and movies and ads like every week as possible. It was actually pretty rough. I got to do a lot of cool products there and projects, but it was really tough physically. And that's probably an entire story of just like professional like fulfillment, but like personal disaster. That's sort of the story of our lives, where you're trying to always like kind of balance, like, okay, I love what I'm doing professionally, but personally I'm absolutely miserable. And so that it's just so much work, so pressure filled, and it's not like
all
we
the
were
guys
in a
are
union.
nodding.
Yeah, it's not like we were in a union, so we weren't really protected from overtime and other kinds of things. And so there's a lot of soul searching there. But then I did some work in Hollywood with some folks that tried to do game business while I was trying to break into the film industry. They were trying to get business in games. So I kind of did that for a while for a couple of relatively large post houses, including a company called Sound Deluxe, which is I don't know if you guys know Scott Gershon. He's a pretty big name.
I do know Scott Gershon.
Oh yeah, so I worked with Scott for some time at Sound Deluxe, and I still keep in touch with him.
Yeah, he's a really nice guy.
Yeah, and so he's very talented. Obviously did a lot of big Hollywood films as well as do games. He has a really good technical mind, and then that's when the whole thing with middleware and stuff like that. So. But that's sort of the first half, and then the rest, was just me trying to get away from the game industry.
Well, you can't leave without at least mentioning Double Fine Productions and the fact that you worked with Ron Gilbert.
Oh God, yes, I totally.
Given the Monkey Island came out in the last week.
Yeah, I guess I just kind of try to put that aside. Although Double Fine was, I worked there for 8 years, but yeah, Ron was like a game designer in residence. That was like Tim's idea. Tim Schafer's the founder for Double Fine, and so yeah, he pitched the game called The Cave and some other games, and so I was able to. Fortunately or unfortunately work with him. I mean, Ron's a great guy, obviously. He's a man of few words. But so that was a lot of fun working with him as well, and obviously trying to draw back to some of the Sierra, I guess, days and kind of putting that into stuff. But yeah, Double Fun was a great experience as well. But yeah, a lot of that was just trying to find myself, trying to inject your voice at the same time. Trying to balance my personal life. Yeah.
Still in the fucking games industry. When can I start making movies? Kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. But its grass is always greener, right? Because even in film, there's this. I've also experienced a lot of challenges as a creative. With the kind of you may be in the union, but like they still require you. There's so much work that has to get done in such a short amount of time, and if you're lucky and if you have meet with folks that are really directors that really care about you. They take care of you, but if you get up with some directors that are pretty intense, it's no different than the game industry. It could be pretty tough for the folks who are actually on the ground, working and stuff. So that's a whole other kind of conversation.
Hey, Brian, I got to tell you, I still have my Xbox 360, so I can still play Brutal Legend.
Yeah, I was gonna say Brutal Legend has to come
Lord.
up.
I
would have sold off my 360 long ago, but I love that game.
Well, thank you. I mean, I had a small part in that, but yeah, that was Tim's vision. Great music, great sound. So yeah, that was a lot of fun.
There was a question in the chat very long ago, and I promised I would ask this. I even said I would ask it in a few minutes. But there was a question for the Sierra guys. Moving back towards Girl in the Tower. Apparently, there was a parody called "Squirrel with the Power."
Girl in the Power.
And some people are asking for clarification about what the hell is a squirrel with the power, and why was that? Because apparently it was an official Sierra parody of "Girl in the Tower." What happened there? What's that story?
That was later.
Was that a later?
Something like something Carlos would have written.
Something Josh would do.
Or Josh,
It was after Josh's time too. But that'll be a good. Unfortunately, to the question asker, none of the guys involved are actually on this stream, so we will have to take that question on notice and bring it up again at the next stream, where hopefully later '90s guys are, because it was in the Gary Spinrad, Dan Keeler, Guy Whitmore, etc. era.
Yeah,
around '96 or so.
I was completely in the
but it was a Sierra remix of it. I think Gary Spinrad actually did it.
Phantasmagoria 2.
I know David Henry did one of the GK3 theme. That was another parody. That was pretty good. But
no, that never came to light.
Yeah, well, thank God. But yeah, it was pretty funny.
Wow.
Wait, I didn't realize Gary Whitmore worked at Sierra. He did?
Guy
Whitmore.
Yeah.
Yep.
Crazy. Everyone worked there.
Couldn't get him in. Couldn't get Jonathan Cunningham. Hi, Jonathan. But yeah, these guys were all around the 95, 96 time. But yeah, Guy, what a phenomenal composer. But he worked for Sierra. Was it the same time you were there, actually, Brian? He came in around 90.
He came in just after, 94? Yeah. Oh gosh.
He would have come in around 94, 95. I don't know if Bob remembers being the closest to that time period.
Yeah, I think he came in right as I was leaving.
So somewhere in that 95 era.
Yeah. Guy and Chance, right? They came in either just after I left or we dovetailed, but I never had a chance to like work with him or anything, which was a bummer because I'm a big fan of Guy and both Chance.
Yeah, both amazingly talented guys. But yeah, Guy stayed, and I don't know if Guy was freelance for the second game, but he was still there for 97 as well. So,
Brian, did you cross paths with Victor Cruz?
I sure did. In fact, Victor was like my partner in crime at the time. So he came in, and we would just bitch and moan about the hours and how little we were getting paid.
I remember him telling me all kinds of stories about the Foley for Phantasmagoria. Like it sounded like there was a lot of food involved. Like
no, they built the sound stage. It was crazy, if I recall, and all sorts of just really high level stuff. But the problem was they didn't treat it properly. So when I would get the files, there was just way too much room, and I remember. That was again, I had to learn to keep my mouth shut because, you guys, it looks really good visually, but you have to put sound dampeners everywhere. Otherwise, these sound files they're too difficult. They're all reverberant. So, by the way, those doors and some of the Foleys that I were editing, they were just washed with room tone with no treatment.
Yeah. Oh, I remember that. The house in Phantasmagoria sounded like it was a fucking cathedral with all.
Yeah, and not in a good way. It was just it wasn't close mic'd enough, and there wasn't enough treatment, and so it was Foleyed with all the cool stuff, but they forgot to treat the stage. Anyway,
exactly.
So
I love the haze.
Everyone's going to play Phantaz tonight.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if I could.
I love all the stories of hazing. Most of the people came into Sierra and were told to get on to converting things for lower sound cards, except for Brian, who came in and they didn't do lower conversion, so they just said, "Why don't you do doors instead?"
Yeah, I was the door guy. Yeah, thousands and thousands of
doors became the new conversions.
Yeah. Wait, actually, I was Phantasmagoria did have MIDI music. Sorry, go ahead, Ken.
I was just going to say I was spared that grueling part of the initiation as well. But as Rob and I did, we converted the game arts music.
I was going to say that was even worse.
Which I don't. So we did our own conversions, early on, and then as new people were hired, but Sorcerian and Thexter and what was the other one, Rob, that we did?
Sylphid.
Did you do Firehawk?
Yeah,
well,
that was Rob.
It was Firehawk and Sorcerian were the two that Ken and I did.
Yeah, and boy, it was like just cut my heart out and throw it away because it was and it gives me empathy for those who had to take our soundtracks and turn them into make them compatible with their other stuff. So,
well, I got to bring in Rob here because from what Rob told me, conversions were not even an option because Japan wouldn't give the music files.
Well, right. We had to take it. I took a cassette tape of the 9801, that NEC 9801 machine from Japan with both of those games on, and then just had to start hacking away at it in Voetra. I mean, measure by measure.
So you transcribed it by ear.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Oh my God.
Wow.
And so did Ken. I mean, we both did. Ken came in, and I started the project, and Ken came in on both of them and helped clear them out and get them done. And he rocked it too. I mean, he did. Thanks a lot, Ken.
well, I think Josh, you were the producer on those two games, weren't you? And weren't you saying, "Hey, you going to get those done pretty soon"?
Yeah, Firehawk and Zelyard, and there was another one.
Bulsarian?
No, that was already done
Sylphid?
by the time I got to Sierra. Sylphid and Sorcerian, I think, were already finished by the time I got to Sierra.
Right, I do.
Well,
but
then
I
there
do
was only
recall-
Zeliad and Thexter left.
Yeah, I do recall getting a little note from Josh saying, "Sure, it'd be nice if we got those done pretty soon." And so Rob and I were double teaming it here.
Yeah, but those Japanese composer guys, they had some really good tracks. I mean, if you listen to that was some meat in that stuff. There really was.
Yeah, and I got to hand it, hats off to Rob. Rob's got a rock and roll background. I've got an orchestra background. He made those tracks really, really shine. So I had nothing but admiration for the grunt work that we both did, but I think you did it better than I did.
Well, so here's actually a question for the two of you. I'm very sorry because it is fascinating that Ken, you have an orchestra background, and Rob have a. Oh God, what's happening?
Sorry, Chris was about to ask something.
Sorry. Something. It was just. I just want to say it would make sense that Rob had that focus, and so Rob really liked the MT32 because you had this whole other layer of audio that you could create, not just the GM orchestra sounds. So I was kind of along Ken's area. I sort of appreciated having the fixed orchestra palette, but Rob, especially in those early, especially Japanese music, it was very synthy, and you really needed to have that palette. And so I can totally understand why it was a disappointment to try to. What are you going to make it with, a cello or something?
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry, Charles, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that in Space Quest 4, some of the most rock and roll themes are composed by Ken, who did like the monochrome bikers and stuff, and some of the most non-rock and roll-ish were composed by Rob, like the Skatorama theme and the the patrol ship taking off and all these big orchestral swells you'd assume would come from Ken and vice versa.
It's ironic you say that though, because even the Skatorama has that very rock and roll drum beat, which is very, very Rob.
Kind of. But it's also haunting and traumatizing at the same time.
That's for a different reason.
Sequence? Yeah.
Yeah. That's because it's the most infamous sequence in Sierra game history.
But you guys said you didn't hear each other's pieces before the final game was assembled. So, like, Rob, what did you think of Ken's rock and roll chops, and vice versa? Ken, what did you think of Rob's orchestral chops?
I have nothing but admiration for Rob. I was very impressed with the stuff he wrote for Space Quest 4, and I mean, it was right on the money. It's exactly what the game needed. So just nothing but admiration.
And Ken, he rocks it, man. He did it. Like to tell you, when we did the Japanese stuff, and then also in the Space Quest, the biker stuff, that was cool stuff. So yeah, man. Ken's got it going.
Fucking hell, yeah.
I remember Ken coming in. I remember when he first started and we were talking about old synths. And this is like growing up, going through keyboard magazines and dreaming about synths and stuff. And Ken said he bought the kit for the Paia synthesizer.
Yeah.
And I was like thinking,
I had one of
that's
those.
totally cool. And I was thinking, man, you actually built it and all that. You know how they sell you all the parts and stuff.
Yeah, the double cabinet one.
Oh yeah, I had that. Yeah.
You had that
Did
too?
you build it
I
to it?
did. Yeah, I did. Mhm.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
cool.
You just mentioned Keyboard Magazine. Oh my God, that brings back memories, man.
Yeah.
Keyboard Magazine. What the?
Oh yeah.
I think actually I'm gonna have to check in another room. I think I've got a Keyboard Magazine.
Keyboard Magazine.
Okay.
What do you call it? When
You guys go down
like
this
a
path.
retro
I'm just
edition?
gonna take a quick break. Hang on. I'll be back later. Sorry.
What was the question, Trolls?
In a bit.
He's gone.
I had no question. I'm off. I'm off for a pee and maybe a smoke, and then I'll come back.
Will
It's
you
2
do
a.m.
that?
You guys. Keyboard Magazine. I only use VSTs. I only have this completely yellow.
No, we won't talk about gear. Gear is we may in a minute. But
Yeah, well, I mean, you have to talk about Keyboard Magazine. Remember, the Keyboard Magazine. That was our porn. You know, like I remember the DX1, but the Yamaha had this amazing ad, and they're like a giveaway.
DX7.
Yeah, well, they had like the DX1, the DX something, and then DX7. It was like this 3 rack. You can have like 3.
7, 9, and 11. Oh no, that's the Ken knows that. It's the TX something.
Yeah, the TX7.
But you do the giveaway, right? I mean, I've entered it. Like who didn't enter? Oh my God,
Yeah.
Keyboard Magazine giveaway. You know, like
Yeah.
what is? It's like worth my entire like college education for to be able to afford these things. And man, that brings back Keyboard Magazine. Holy cow, that does bring back some memories.
And that was done by the guys that did Guitar Player, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I remember Guitar Player magazine, had gone for a few years, and then they started Keyboard Player, and all us guitar players were like, "Oh God, now they're going to do it for keyboards."
Brian, if you want nostalgia, just go on Facebook Marketplace and search for synth or synthesizer.
Oh no!
And just see what comes up.
Oh no!
It is basically Keyboard Magazine.
Oh my God!
In your local area.
Oh jeez. Yeah, probably not. I don't want to be space in my garage. I got too much junk as it is, too much gear.
I'm not going to pan around and show my living room, but it basically looks like an edition of Keyboard Magazine.
Oh my God!
Has anyone
By the way,
played that new
one quick
trombone
thing.
game?
Oh, go ahead.
Has
Chris.
anyone played that new trombone game that's taking Steam by storm?
It got a big mention on Troll Discord, actually.
It's a big deal right now.
Well, Chris built and wrote the driver for a MIDI interface for the Atom computer, if I remember correctly.
God,
right?
you remember that?
I do remember. Yeah.
That is,
he was a techie.
Chris is also a trombone player, in case anyone's wondering.
Right. But you had like a MIDI controller for your trombone, or am I misremembering that part as well?
No, it was a pitch to MIDI converter. So
yeah, that's right.
Some of that Larry stuff and Laura Bow stuff was played in, and it came out really messy, and I had to edit a lot of pitch bends and notes. But
and two guys that weren't able to be here today, Aubrey Hodges, who's working on a AAA game for EA and has 2 pieces to compose by midnight, and Dale Stump, who is currently grading papers for Full Sail University. Dale composed the guitar parts on a guitar to MIDI converter for Quest of Glory 4, amongst others. And Aubrey Hodges obviously scored the game. And Aubrey said exactly the same thing to me the other day, which was that he had to take the messy guitar to MIDI conversion and make it into something that actually resembled music.
Yeah.
Wow, I wonder if that was the same unit, because I know it had a mic input and a line in, but
he told me the unit a long time ago, and I have long since forgotten. Yeah, it was a GR something.
GR1.
Yeah.
Had a MIDI pickup on the guitar.
It was a Roland GR something.
Yeah, I think mine was a Yamaha, I can't even remember now. But
And then Neil came in and did almost all his stuff through guitar. Remember?
Yeah,
And
well, Neil
seemed like
Neil
most
was
of
another
that was-
apology because which I mentioned before, he was here earlier, but yes, got busted by his wife and had to attend the family barbecue. So that is where he is now. But as Robert was saying, he is a guitar player, and as he told us earlier off video, he's still playing gigs and he lives in, where does he live? Oregon. He lives in Oregon, and he comes to Washington all the time to play gigs, and is still very much a rock and roll man.
That's great. That's great.
But yeah, he came to Sierra around 92, 3, Bob?
Yeah, I think probably about 93. But you know, the stuff he could do on guitar, you know, he could do pretty much any genre.
You can hear his guitar work in Space Quest 6, in Police Quest 4, and you can also hear his guitar solo on a real guitar in Rama, in the Humans area. Oh, sorry, it's in the museum as an example of human music.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Cool.
Yeah, neat.
Great player.
Hey, Rob,
phenomenal guitar player.
You reminded me when we were talking about old gear and how we both were looking through Keyboard Magazine as our porn, basically. One of the keyboards that I wanted that I saw, you know, shortly before coming to work for Sierra was this rig called the Synclavier. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, definitely.
It was like this high end, you know, Michael Jackson was using it, and
Tony Banks and Genesis.
Had physical tapes in it, didn't it?
Oh, that was the Mellotron.
Yeah.
Synclavier
Sting had one of
loops.
Sting had one of those.
Oh.
Well, what I was about to say was it was like $30,000 in 1986 money, and I'm sure there's a lot more now. But I finally have one as a VST that they make available.
Nice.
So 30 years later, Rob, I finally get to be fulfilled in my gear quest.
Oh wow!
They had one of those in my school at the Schoenberg Hall at UCLA. They had one of those, but you were not allowed to use it until you became a grad student there. So F those guys. God damn it, UCLA. I'm sorry. I hope none of you guys are used. See how bitter I've become in my old age.
Hey, I was UCLA. Yeah, Sting had a Synclavier, and one of the things we were assigned to do was go to a studio in New York for 3 days and just listen to all his demos that he had done. And that's where he did all his writing, was with the Synclavier, and you know, some amazing stuff that he did. You could pretty much go anywhere with those.
I remember hearing the piano samples, it was like a grand piano that was sampled on the Synclavier, and it was pretty amazing. I mean, it wasn't like, you know, so that's when this is pretty legit. And I think it was all like, was it like ROM or something, or RAM? It was like RAM based.
Yeah, it actually, just having looked it up, it had basically the specs of what it took until it had in 1980. It had the specs of what it took until the mid 90s to get.
Something like
it
that.
had 32 meg of RAM.
Yeah, it's like an emulator, but like back then, you know, with just crazy. It's probably like crazy money to do, but that probably is an interesting stand. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah.
20 grand plus, apparently.
Not for video game composers at the time.
Right.
I had a question for Rudy.
Good night.
Night,
hey,
Steve.
Rudy, how long did you live in Oakhurst? You were there a long time. Can't hear you.
Rudy's muted.
Gotta unmute, Rudy.
There we go.
Yeah, sorry. From March of 1992 till 2019.
2019.
Really?
Wow.
Summer of 2019, I moved to Seattle, but I was there in that house for 27 years.
Why would you leave there? What?
Well, I love to do my morning walks, you know, there. And it got to the point where about half of the year I would be smelling smoke as I walked around. And I thought in my years getting older, et cetera, it might not be too healthy to be sniffing in all of that dirt. And the other biggest point that made that decision was my kids, after they got out of college, they ended up working in Seattle. They had good gigs up up there. So they kept saying, Mom and Dad, you really ought to think about moving up here. So when you retire, why don't you do that?
That's cool.
Big move.
So we were retired about 6 years, at that point, and so we thought, okay, let's sell the place, get up there. And we managed to pull that off just a few months before COVID.
Wow.
Wow. Well, it's funny you mentioned the air quality, Rudy, because someone in California in my Discord mentioned just 2-3 days ago that they couldn't go out and ship me something because the air quality was too bad. So
yeah. Don't get me started, but I love being just a half hour more away from Yosemite, and my wife and I enjoyed going there sometimes twice a week, at least once a week, just to do our walks there. And but I remember one crushing day we were driving a typical drive to go into the hills of Yosemite, and everything was burnt. Not everything, but most things on the way there were burnt down, brown, falling onto the ground. And it was just something that my heart couldn't take too much of.
Wow.
Just seeing all the nature ruined.
What a nice thing to come back to.
And so and the opportunity and the thought in our minds came that, we just moved to Seattle.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and I don't know how much truth there is, but we were watching a PBS documentary. It was about 3 hours long. They had it in 3 sessions, but they were predicting, these experts that they were talking to, they were predicting that Seattle 50 years from now would be the only place in the United States that would have groundwater.
Whoa.
Well, I won't be alive 50 years from now. My kids are already there, and just as of 6 months ago, I had my first grandchild.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. So I'm kind of hoping that, that there will be something of the world left for these people.
Yeah.
I thought
I'll still be around in 50 years.
Well, that was a lovely positive thing to come back to.
The end of the world as we know it.
Cool.
No, but to be honest, Rudy, just riffing very briefly off of that, some of the worst, or not worst, but some of the areas that are hit worst by wildfires in Australia are where my mother and father live, back in South Australia, and it's there. I remember when I was living in the States and went back to visit in 2012. There had just been a huge wildfire, and there was this part where I was driving to my mum's property. She's got an acre out near the Barossa Valley where they make wine, and there was just, I don't know, let's say 5 miles of just burned land. It looked like something out of a apocalyptic movie. It was just the most weird thing when you're just driving through countryside, normal countryside, and then there's this period that's just burned.
It's like another planet. It's like driving on another planet.
Have you seen something like that, Josh?
Well, driving through Yosemite, parts of Yosemite that were burned. It was just otherworldly.
When you guys remember Christy and Randy, and they lost their home and almost everything.
Christy Marks,
yeah, in the Paradise Fire. And I remember Randy and I were texting each other, because Jane and I were trying to figure out if we were going to move back to the West. And I was saying, I love I love the Sierras, but, I don't think I want to move back there because it's going to burn again, And sure enough, like a couple of weeks later, Paradise went. Right.
Mm-hmm. North Fork just had evacuations just a few weeks ago. I don't know if you heard about that.
Who did?
North Fork, right next to Oakhurst.
Yeah.
We're back in it now, in that season.
How close are you to that area, Rob?
Well, when I go back to my place that I have in Sanger, all those hills are right up right around me. I'm right up against the base of the Kings Canyon. That doesn't seem to get burned, but last year with that whole region up by Shaver Lake, this just went. It was crazy. It was ugly.
That's what we're having in Australia too, with all different parts Even my hometown almost got fires a couple of years back, and that's never in the history of the country had them.
Yeah,
But
and then here
anyway.
in San Diego in '03, the big fires that happened here where Orpheus's house went down. I mean, I live on the coast, but all that ash came down. It totally turned my white garage door brown. I mean, it was ugly. I mean, had to wash it all off, and it was amazing how much stuff came out of the air.
Just on that note, we had the big fires in Sydney a few years back, and even though I'm in Canberra, which is technically another part, the air blew over, and our air quality was worse than China's for about 2 weeks. And let me tell you, they're still not sure of what the long-term health effects will be on this area from that, because our air quality was, normally it's like 50, which is very good, and it was like 1,500 or something.
Oh, wow.
It was insane.
Suddenly doing MIDI conversions for Tandy and PC speaker doesn't sound too bad, does it?
I want to show you one of my prized possessions.
As Brian said to me a few days ago, it seemed very stressful at the time, but looking back, maybe it wasn't as bad as I thought it was.
Can you see that at all?
Oh yeah, no, Chris, what is that? Adios.
So that was something that I think, I forget her last name before she was married, Frankie Drew. That was a gift, a departing gift. When I left Sierra, and it's got the talking bear on it.
That's cool.
You see the talking bear on it, and the bass, the bass lake fish.
Yeah,
that's just one of my favorite possessions.
Cool.
Oh yeah,
I remember Frankie.
The talking bear, a staple of Sierra Online in jokes. I remember the guide to Eastern Madera County. Was it Doug Oldfield who did that? Weird little thing. It's an extra on the Space Quest collection CDs.
Oh,
and there's a whole bit about the talking bear that when you lean in closely and whisper in its ear, it'll say, "Grr, let's talk real estate."
That's exactly right.
Oh my god, that's funny.
Loved that place. Talking
how about the Forks Burgers? You remember Forks Burgers?
Oh yeah.
At the Bass Lake.
I wanted to ask Josh, who I had begged, steal, or borrowed to come in and represent the, not producers, but writers and developers side of things. Did you have any stories about any of these fine gentlemen?
Well, before I went to Sierra, I was working at this massive ad agency in Chicago. And I wasn't getting a lot of job satisfaction out of it. And I just knew that I wanted to work somewhere where I could work with Ken Allen. That's all I needed. And it turns out he was at Sierra, so I went to Sierra.
Oh, there you go. What was it that drew you especially to the magic that is Ken Allen?
I think it was Space Quest 3.
Which
we worked after too. We worked on that
King's Quest 1
game. But that's right. Yeah, he took over for a previous producer.
And then much after Sierra, we worked on Callahan's.
And much after, we both worked on Space Venture, but not together, unfortunately.
Right. Did you ever end up using the song? I haven't gotten to that part of the game yet.
Which song?
Is there a song, Charles?
There was a song that I...
Oh, wait, there's two.
A song I wrote for Space Venture. It's called the Technobabble song.
Oh, yeah. I was there when they recorded the voice, and it was...
Oh, good.
Pretty hilarious.
Oh, good.
But I haven't seen it in game yet, so I don't know. I don't know where it is.
I haven't either. I can't get to that part of the game. I'm stuck.
I don't recall actually hearing that.
Hold
There's
on,
two
I can't get
voices, but there's one song sung by the Three Habaneros, which are anthropomorphic chili robots who congratulate you on being customer number 1,000 or something, and they just will not shut up unless you tip them.
This thing that Josh wrote, it was sung by the voice of Yakko from the Animaniacs. Yeah, he sang it, and it was.
Oh, how cool!
I was there. I'm going. Oh wow, Josh is going to love this, and I'm surprised you haven't heard it. You know what? I'll dig up I'll look in the depot to see if it's there, and if it's there, I'll ask Mark.
That'd be fantastic. I would love to hear it.
There's a lot of hidden stuff in Space Venture that I haven't seen. Yeah.
Oh, I'll tell you one thing that's in there, and this goes back to you trolls, and this also goes back to creating custom sounds that we kind of talked about at the beginning of this. One of the custom sounds that I created for Space Quest 4 for the ad lib and for the for the FM cards was this. Are you familiar with what a water bell is? What it sounds like? A water bell is it's a giant glass, and there's water in it. It's on a rope, and as you strike it, you tilt it, and it makes the pitch go down. And you'll hear that in a lot of like horror films or a lot of suspense. And I tried to create that sound for the Space Quest game. I did okay on the MT32, but I wanted something on the FM, the Sound Blaster cards, and I created something which Trolls and his friend Frederick have both told me scared the living crap out of them if they played this game, because it kind of just like got this music playing and all of a sudden this bell hits, and you called it, what was it, Trolls?
The hellish bells. Frederick coined that term, the hellish bells, because it sounds nothing
bell,
like a bell, but it
Professor
sounds
Lloyd
like
in Space Quest 4.
In Professor Lloyd, it sounds like an FM. It sounds like an FM card just vomiting all over. It just goes. Bleh.
Right. And it's got nothing to do with the Hell's Bell song, but I reached out to Trolls and I said, I'm trying to find that sound. I would love to put it in the Space Venture game, and he says, hold please, and pretty soon I have it delivered to me on my phone. He's got it at his fingertips. So there is a song that's in Space Venture which has the Hell's Bells sound in it. It's toward the end, and so that'll be a little Easter egg that only you and the fine folks that are watching us will know about.
Yes, and it was sampled by a person on my SQH Discord. We actually sampled it because we were doing the reorchestration of Space Quest 4, the music that Rob and Ken and Mark did for Space Quest 4. And of course, we wanted to have the Professor Lord theme on there, and we wanted it to be as authentic as possible. And while you can have a tubular bell and just make the pitch go down as it cracks in, it just wasn't the same. So a fellow named K-Panic, or Daniel Lutz is his real name actually, booted up Space Quest 4 on his original Sound Blaster 16 card and sampled those hellish bells. And that was the sample I sent you. So just had it at my fingertips.
Amazing.
Someone asks, where is that bell? It's in Professor Lloyd's theme when the hologram that comes up, and when he starts talking about how the supercomputer got infected and all that, all of a sudden the music just crashes. It gets very gloomy and dark, and that's when you hear that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Can I ask a piece of trivia to all of the Oakhurst Sierra people here?
Of course.
Yeah. Do you remember that there used to be, I guess you call it a tour bus, where they used to let tourists come into the building to watch the games and the people who work there being made? And I guess the company hired a lady to show them around and describe their experiences.
Yes.
Kelly?
I see some heads moving, so you remember that?
It was Kelly, right?
Kelly.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Kelly Spurgeon?
Well, I have
Kelly.
one of those small world experiences there. I
Kelly,
come
what?
here in 2019 to get my own new doctor, and he's interviewing me when we're talking, and I give him the experience of, I used to live in Oakhurst, California, and he says, really? He says, do you know that my grandmother lives there around Auburn somewhere, and we used to go and visit her, and she would take me in the summers to come to the Sierra Online to walk around the halls so that I could see the games being made.
That's awesome.
So I never met anybody who was, I never knew anybody who came in that building for this reason, and now my doctor has.
Well, funny you say that, Rudy. I looked up one day through my window in my office there in Sierra where I was, and I saw my high school dean walking through. That's funny.
Did they charge money for this, or is this just like a press event or like a branding marketing?
There was a gift shop. There was a gift shop at the end.
A theater. There was like a little, called a theater room, and they would sit people down, and they'd get to watch videos about how the games were made, and then they got to walk around the halls a little bit and peek in at some of the rooms.
I thought it was cool.
And they went to the gift shop and spent all their hard-earned.
Yeah.
I don't remember a gift shop.
Yeah, there was where the conference room is now. I think there was a gift shop on the other side of that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I don't remember that at all.
Josh has just blocked this out of his memory.
Scott Murphy behind the counter going, "What can I get you?"
I do remember Ken used to walk around with investors or something all the time, and he'd just like pop into a room with no warning, and then say, "Well, what are you working on?"
Too. Yeah.
Ken, you probably remember that in the music room. You'd be working. We'd all be working, in our various things, and then all of a sudden, there's somebody Ken's showing around. Just like drop everything. Gotta give him the tour of what we're doing. And
I love that Stuart's telling this from a 1989 perspective, and Brian is saying that in 1995 it was still going on.
It was going on. In fact, I remember very distinctly. It was Craig Alexander who was the GM at the time, and I didn't even know who Ken was, Ken Williams, and there was a big entourage in the second floor, and he just randomly pops in and goes, "Hey, by the way, where's that fancy system, that Pro Tools system we just bought?" Which was quite expensive, it was like $10,000-$15,000. And so he just asked me to do a demo. It was super panicky. I don't remember what it was. I was trying to, this is how you play, is that, it can play like digital audio. And I remember something about like how this was going to be like, our audio is going to be like the way our cinema animation is going to be like Pixar movies. Our sound is going to be like that or something like that. I'm like, no, but I just nodded. But I remember that big entourage. It was quite terrifying because we had no notice.
Yeah, it happens.
I remember.
We had to be ready.
I remember one time Ken walking into the room, into the writer's block, and he had this very tall, gray-haired gentleman with him, and he said, "This is our writer's room, and these are all the in-house designers. Everyone, I'd like you to meet Nolan Bushnell."
Wow. Wow.
And then he did the same thing with Daryl Gates a couple years later. It was not quite the same vibe.
Yeah. Just for context, Josh, who's the first name that you mentioned?
Oh, Nolan Bushnell is the founder of Atari.
Pong. Made Pong.
Yeah. Potentially the father of video games, I guess. I don't know.
Potentially other ones.
Well, Sierra sued Atari at one point, or Atari sued Sierra, and that decision defined that you could copy a play mechanic in a video game, but you could not copy the graphics or the code. And so Atari lost, and Sierra won, and Jawbreaker was born. But the fact that Sierra is showing Nolan Bushnell around, the building is, I'm wondering how Ken felt at that point,
Crazy.
Wow.
But yeah, I had to have a dog, and Stuart had to have a pony, and we had to have him ready to go, ready to show off anytime.
That's what I was going to say. Is I learned to keep something finished on the side, because it was never the right time to show. So I had to keep something ready to switch over to and play when he said, "Oh, what are you working on?" It's like this.
That absolutely makes me think of the Grand Theft Auto leak from last week, where everyone criticized it because it wasn't ready enough.
Oh, yeah.
Just got to have something ready to show.
Yeah.
This should all have done what Neil Grandstaff was talking about. He did in the meetup earlier, which was he came into Sierra with just this like a virtual suitcase full of already finished music that he could just like pick from and just go, no,
that's a good point.
Here's a piece.
Yeah, I did that. Most of the stuff that was in Hoyle Classic is stuff I had before, and I just pulled it out and redid it because I knew I didn't have enough time.
Well,
a good
fact that you're a producer and composer all the time probably didn't help.
Yeah, I was cheating the producer side of me. You know?
Wow.
Bad when you wear both hats, but you can only blame yourself.
Yeah.
If I remember right, doesn't Sierra feature prominently in that book called Hackers? Isn't there? I think there's like a chapter in there. Stuart, were you there? Like,
most of that was before my time, but I did start before the other building. I started in the old building, the one kind of south of town.
The red building.
Yeah, the red building.
The redwood building.
Yeah. They were building the other facility when I had started. So it was a much cruder working environment, definitely. But those were probably the halls, from the Hackers book that they spoke of, and all the stories, things that went on there at night,
Right.
I remember Scott talking about the red building, the iconic red building where Roger Wilco lands in front of it at the end of Space Quest 3, and it's sort of unfortunately not there anymore. And he has nothing but the worst things to say about that building. Like, it was unventilated, it was cold as hell, and they were for some reason
the tsunami building too? Ken?
Yeah, it was.
I think it became
for some reason,
Scott
all the
makes a joke.
designers were stuck in a bungalow like next to the building. They weren't even inside the building. Shit like that. Sorry, go ahead, Ken.
I think Sierra ended up moving their QA department over there because they just were growing so much.
Yeah, my wife Kim worked in QA at the time I was there.
Oh, that's right.
And, she was over in that building still.
But Scott makes a joke that that was the building where he had his vasectomy in, which I thought was interesting. Which is weird because that's where my dentist was too. So I was a little discomforted to hear that.
Time to get a new dentist, I'm afraid.
Same guy.
No, hopefully not. But that building, the office where the music room was is now the elevator shaft. They've put an elevator finally into that building.
Wow.
Yes.
So hey, on that note, I've got to run.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's.
Yeah, me too.
I apologize.
I started the avalanche. I didn't mean to do that, but I looked at Tom, and my wife is knocking at my door, and so
no.
I mean, it was so enjoyable. It's really hard for me to get away from it, but thank you so much for organizing this and all that.
Yeah, man.
Let me just take a moment to thank all of you for coming, and also to preemptively invite you to another one sometime in the holiday season, TBA.
Sure.
But I very, very much appreciate all of you giving up your time today because, it's been a long amount of time, and I appreciate it.
Yes,
I'll only be there.
All you guys.
I'll only be there if Josh is there.
You guys are like rubber and glue, aren't you?
I met some of those newer guys. I would love to be able to get together with like Guy and Chance and Kevin.
I'm going to be working very hard on all of those men.
Yeah, we'll and let me know if you need any help with getting those guys. And otherwise, I will spill some beans because I've got dirt on all those guys.
Well, that's good. I'll mention that to them, and that'll be incentive.
Definitely,
to get them
especially Chance. All right.
Chance has already said he's got your Lighthouse game in his book that's just released. So
that's a complete lie. He's never even heard my music. Not on that.
He
not
said
on
it
that track anyway.
He wants you to read his book.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right.
Plug for Chance's book that just came out, by the way.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here,
Brian.
Brian.
This is a 20th anniversary thing. This is the 20th anniversary of your site. Is that right?
It is the 20th anniversary of my site, and I'm putting together an album with most of the major games music on there. And if I haven't already, I will be reaching out to you individually and asking you for a track to put on there. Although Rob has already generously told me that it will cost $1,000 to get it on there, so we'll see how I go saving my pennies. But
Just
yes,
put his
it has
name
been
on top of the credits. That worked for me.
it has been scary that it's been 20 years just running a music website. So as Bob said to me in chat the other day, God, I'm old. So it's been more than half my life working on Sierra game music. So
yeah, honestly, I don't understand how this exists, but it's insane.
You guys all are amazing composers. I hate to tell you.
The fact that we're all here is partly because of you, I think. So I appreciate it.
Exclusively because of me, in fact, Chris. But
you and Trolls have kept the community alive, and we deeply appreciate that very much.
Yeah,
that's right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we're going to continue to do it as long as you guys keep showing up.
There's a finite amount of time there, isn't there?
And when you play, we're getting a lot of tributes. But yes, thank you guys so much for coming.
Before we go, I would like to know if anybody has anything to plug. Maybe.
Oh yeah, I had Chance's book already. Ken's game just got released. Bob has a project that just came out.
My new album sequel comes out October 1st.
Some idiot
Rudy,
played
you got
drums on
anything?
it, but the rest of it is pretty good.
Stuart?
Yeah,
Rob?
enjoying retired life.
Rob, you got any albums out?
Not that I've got them in the works, to be honest with you. Release dates, I'll let you know. You'll be one of the first to know.
Thank you. Ken, when's the Space Venture soundtrack coming out?
I'm going to try to have it by Thanksgiving.
Okay, so that's coming. Awesome. Josh, you got any things to plug?
Just Space Venture.
What about you, Chris B?
I'm just trying to learn how to make an old fashioned.
Not too much sugar. Not too much sugar.
What about you, Brian?
Oh, yeah. Running my company, Quirky Toys, quirkyrider.com. And then my YouTube channel is a small little music, kind of like this.
What's the name of your YouTube channel?
Oh, Dungeon Music Theater. It's
that's what it was.
I started it just, as a way to kind of get my creative outlet out, because I don't really do a whole lot of music or things like that. I'm just, business sales guy these days. It's a nice little outlet. And this is, something like this. I would love to have some of you guys on as guests on that channel. But more, just a wonderful time to be able to reconnect with folks with common thread. So.
And the last one, Neil Grandstaff has his albums at cdbaby.com and also on YouTube. So you can check out his rock and roll albums if you want. And I own them and they're very good. I recommend them.
He wasn't here. He doesn't get a plug.
He was here. He was here before you were, Josh, I'm afraid.
Oh, never mind.
But he got busted by his wife and had to leave.
Yeah, he had a prior family engagement that he was hiding from, and then they caught him, physically dragged him out of the room. But yeah,
that's what he told me.
On a personal note, thank you everyone so much for showing up. Alistair, thank you so much for organizing this. And basically, all I did was just provide an outlet for this to happen in.
I didn't have anyone to do that, and I'm very grateful.
Cheers very much. And like you said, Ken, we're going to continue abusing the hell out of your fine works for eons to come. And my little kid has already taken a special interest in, all the game boxes and all the music. I play him Space Quest music in the car and stuff. And he says, "Dad, not this song." And I say, "Shut up. It's my car." So it's all good. We're going to keep it alive as long as people are interested. So thank you so much for coming, everyone.
We'll do this again in another 20 years, gentlemen.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good to see you all.
See you.
All right, guys.
Yep. Thank you so much for coming, everyone. That's it for me. It's 2:40 a.m. I have to be at work in the morning, so no long goodbyes. I'm just going to say see you around the Chrono stream. Bye, everyone.